right off the hop, we are going to cut into what happened last night at the Brandt Center. The Regina Pats getting shellacked in Game 3, 8-2 loss to the Medicine Hat Tigers, now trail that best-of-7 series 2-1. And to talk more about that, we welcome to the program Taylor Shire from the Regina Leader-Post, who was at the game and had a nice little read-up on it on leaderpost.com. Taylor, welcome to the program.
Appreciate it.
Did you hear in the press box if Drew and Jessica Posty had their baby yet?
I did not hear. The radio booth is a few booths down from us, so.
Yeah, and I know you guys don't all socialize.
And I'm not going to break any baby news here, so it's going to stay in my lane.
It's very cliquey up there, I know. And I was going to say, can you believe that he took the night off just for the birth of his child? Like, she couldn't wait for him a couple extra hours?
Come on. You know better than that.
I remember...
They are in charge, okay?
I think, what's his face? Tony Clark, the guy who's getting, I think he was the one, he's getting kicked out of the MLBPA right now. When he was playing for the Detroit Tigers, he was driving to the park and he dropped his wife off at the hospital and then he kept driving and he went like 2 for 4 or whatever, and then got back, and I think he just missed the birth of his child, and the manager of the Tigers said she could shoot him and not a jury in the world would convict her of it. So since then, I guess we're a little more sensitive to these everything that these women do in bearing our children. Okay, I'm just going to totally get off that topic. Yes. So it sounds to me, I read Dante's write-up. I heard some of the broadcast last night. I was in and out, and I don't know. It just sounds like they got outclassed in the first period, made it look a little better in the second, and then got outclassed in the third. What did you think?
Yeah, you used the word shellacked. I would not describe that game last night as a shellacking. The score said 8-2. It was not an 8-2 game. The Pats were in it for the first 40 minutes. They scored the game's first goal 2 minutes in on one of the weirdest plays I've ever seen. It was disallowed. So Zach Moore shoots the puck. His blade goes flying off his stick over the net. The puck goes towards the net. It's a rebound right to Zach Moore, who's in the slot, along with Jace Eglund. He swipes at it with his broken stick. He misses it, but Jace Eglund hits it at the exact same time. It almost looked like Zach Moore hit it with the shaft of his stick into the net. So the puck goes into the net. Ref immediately waves it off because you can't play with a broken stick, right? And he was in the play, involved in the play. You have to immediately drop your stick. So the Pats.
What was the score at that point? What was the score at that point?
It was 2 minutes into the game, so 0-0.
Okay.
So again, this bizarre play. They made the right call. Disallowed the goal, and Zach Moore was assessed a 2-minute minor for playing with a broken stick. So the Pats all of a sudden had to kill off this penalty when it looked like they had opened the scoring. They were able to kill that off, and then you could kind of see Medicine Hat settle into the game a little bit. They didn't score in the power play, obviously, but then scored right after and scored the first 3 goals in the game. But still, at that point, it was 3-0. I didn't feel Regina was out of the game. They got a goal early in the second period, and then you could kind of sense a bit of momentum coming back, and then they missed a few chances. And that was sort of the turning point to me, was kind of the midway through the second period. There was a couple good chances, or a couple breakaways, a penalty shot at one point, and they didn't capitalize. And then from there, I think the third period got away from them. But through 40 minutes, it was a really good hockey game. There was not a lot of fans inside the Brandt Center to watch that game, and we can debate why that was. But I believe 3,600 were inside the Brandt Center to watch. I would say an entertaining game through 40 minutes, not a shellacking. The Pats were certainly in it. They didn't play, and I don't know how many people watched the game on the Victory Plus in Medicine Hat in Game 2. Regina didn't play as desperate as they did in that game, and Brad Haroff, the head coach, noted that post-game. They weren't as desperate. They weren't playing that playoff hockey, that full buy-in. They were just kind of going through and playing a hockey game against a really good team, and the score was indicative of that in the end. But there wasn't that desperation that we saw in that 4-2 win in Game 2. So tonight, they need to go back to that desperation mentality. It's not an elimination game necessarily, but they can't go down 3-1 and go back to Medicine Hat and expect to win the series.
I don't think they looked all that great in Game 1 either, and Dante makes a big deal about the fact a lot of these players have never played playoff hockey before. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that can hurt you. Usually I think that'll hurt you, but sometimes that can help you too. Sometimes the newness of it all is gives everybody the adrenaline they need. But is it maybe... is there something to be said for Game 1 was something new for a lot of these guys, and then they were able to settle in, play their game in Game 2. Game 3 was something new because it was the first time they did a game at home in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Maddox Schultz, Liam Pugh, Keats Fawcett were all playing their first playoff games last night after missing the first 2 games of the series. So there's a bit of newness for those 3 guys. But experience trumps all when it comes to playoffs. You have to be able to feel it and be in that moment to know really what it's like. And I talked to Ephraim McNutt, the captain, after the game, and I said, do you sit down with some of the younger guys who are less experienced in the playoffs, playing their first series, and really explain to them, or do you just sort of expect that buy-in mentality that I talked about is just going to be there? It's just this this thing that when it's playoff time, because these kids have all played in the playoffs with their U15 teams or wherever they came from prior, or their U18 teams. So they all know that playoffs are a bit of a different beast, but now it's into the Western League, right, where it's a little bit more intense, a few more eyeballs. So there was an adjustment period for the Pats, and you look at the Tigers roster. They went 16-2 last year in the playoffs and won. And so you see that comfort, even when they're down a goal. There's never a panic mode, and the Tigers obviously are one of the favorites to repeat this year. But there's this comfort of experience that you have, and I think the Pats are getting that right now. And they still want to win this series, but I think long-term this series or getting into the playoffs and playing meaningful games is going to pay off in the long run, whether it's next year or the year after or the year after that.
Marek Schlenker got pulled after the 5th goal, and he gave up all 5 goals on 19 shots, didn't make it out of the second period. Just judging by the stats, and again, I only heard bits and pieces of it on the radio, it sounds like it was not his best night. Would you say that they just wanted to rest him up for tonight, or would you say that they were just he was facing a wave that he just couldn't handle? Was it a combination of the two? What happened with the goal?
Yeah, no, they're not resting him up. That wasn't a mercy pull to say, oh, we're going to save you for game 4. I actually don't know who's going to start tonight. I don't think it's been announced quite yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they go to Tabashnik, who started game 1. Schlenker started game 2. They kind of have a 1A, 1B. It's basically a tandem at this point. Tabashnik played better down the stretch through March to get them into this playoff position. They lost their last 5 games of the year, so neither goalie to me was hot going into the playoffs. So they kind of had a flip of the coin who's going to start. Schlenker started more games throughout the regular season, so he is sort of the de facto starter. So it was a little bit surprising to see him not start game 1, although, as I mentioned, Tabashnik played better down the stretch. So I imagine they'll go Tabashnik tonight just to switch it up. Anytime you lose, right, you want to flip back to your other goalie when you have a system like that. So I imagine that's what they'll do. And again, it might be a short leash. If he doesn't play well, then Schlenker better be ready to come in if the story goes as it did last night.
Has Maddox Schultz been playing in this series?
Well, Maddox Schultz and Liam Pugh just helped the Pat Canadians win the Saskatchewan U18 championship on the weekend. They're preparing for regionals, which starts tomorrow at the Cooperator Center. Again, the lineup hasn't been announced for tonight, but they both played last night in their first game of the series. It was a bit of a tough game. Again, 16-year-olds, just turned 16-year-olds playing in the playoffs for the first time against 19, 20, 21-year-olds, some 21-year-olds. That's tough hockey against a team like Medicine Hat. So that was a tough spot for them to be placed in my opinion. I'm not sure if they'll play tonight because they'll want to play for the Pat Canadians, or the Pat Canadians will want them to play for them during regionals, which would then mean 6 games in 6 nights if they play tonight. I don't think that's fair for 2 young kids. I mean, they probably can handle it, but 6 games in 6 nights would be a lot if they make it to Sunday's regional final with the Pat Canadians. So to be determined, I guess, if they get into the lineup tonight. But yeah, they got their first playoff games last night. Schultz had an assist on the first goal, and Pugh scored Regina's second goal, a very nice shot.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, they've shown they can win without them. They did it in game 2 on the road, so they should be able to do it at home. We're talking with Taylor Shire from the Regina Leader-Post about the Pats' first round series with the Medicine Hat Tigers. Do you feel like they need to win game? I feel like they'd have to win game 4 tonight, or it's going to be curtains. It's going to be pretty hard to imagine them winning 2 in Medicine Hat. Dante said that. Well, he said yesterday, I feel like we have to win tonight, and they didn't. But you could see a scenario where maybe they get one more win on the road. But if they fall down tonight and they're down 3-1 and they've only got one more home game left in the series, I would think it's going to feel like lights out if we're talking realistically about it.
Yeah, to go 3-1. I mean, nobody expected them to win this series. Everybody expected them to get swept. So the fact that they won a game I mean, that in itself is a minor win. They were the only 7th seed or 8th seed in the WHL to split the opening weekend. There's a lot of powerhouse teams. You get that in junior hockey every year. So the fact that the Pats were able to go out and steal one on the road, I think speaks a lot about just that buy-in that I was talking about. Yes, they need that same buy-in tonight. If they were to possibly make this a series, obviously they have to win tonight. Going down 3-1 into Medicine Hat for Game 5 on Saturday would be a pretty tough task, although they've won on the road before. If they can win tonight and somehow earn another home game, which would be Sunday back in Regina, I think that would speak a lot. Again, I don't think anybody still is picking them to win the series, but if they can extend it by another game, then they're going to do what they can. But yes, not an elimination game tonight, but if they want a chance to still win the series, definitely a must win tonight.
Facing long odds for sure, and I think we all knew that coming in. And just seeing they're essentially playing with house money because there was never much expected. Is there kind of an underlying feeling that we're on a collision course between Medicine Hat and Prince Albert for the conference ultimately? Yeah,
I don't see why that wouldn't be the final two. Well, yeah, we'll see. There are some other good teams, and then on the other side, I mean, you look how good Everett is. So are we just waiting to see one of these two teams face Everett in the final, and then Everett heads to the Memorial Cup? What does Kelowna look like? But yeah, these two teams were the top of the East all year. Again, we talk about there's not a lot of parity in junior hockey when it comes to this sort of these playoff runs, because you see these teams build up, right? And you look at their roster, you see where they're going to their years to win, their window to win. The Pats' window to win is not right now. They know that. We know that. Everybody else knows that. PA's window to win can be right now. Medicine Hat, obviously they won last year. Their window to win is still right now, even without Gavin McKenna, which it's surprising that they're as good as they were last year without one of the best players in the league. So you look at the windows to win for each team. Yes, house money, Regina Pats, just to be able to get into the playoffs and play meaningful games. When their window is open in a couple of years, they're going to look back at this playoff series and say, okay, we played against a really good team. We stole a game from them. Hey, maybe we can steal another one. But yeah, it's looking like at this point, Medicine Hat and Prince Albert will meet in the East, and who knows what happens. Maybe a team like Calgary can upset somebody too.
Yeah, Calgary's up 3-0 on the Brandon Wheat Kings. They've been good games, so it's not. I think they've all been 1-goal games. But what about that other series? Have you paid any attention to the Saskatoon series? The Blades picking up a victory. Yeah, they won last night against Edmonton. They're up 2-1. They've got Game 4 coming up at home. What do you think about the Blades maybe pulling an upset?
Yeah, I haven't watched any of the games. Saw the highlights. I guess there was a bit of controversy with an overtime goal that was offside, or it appeared to be offside. They can't challenge that in the Western Hockey League. So it was a bit of a tricky,
thank goodness,
tricky spot for them to be put in. Yeah, you want the right call, but at what point do you just say, oh, we can't have video review across the entire league for meaningful games? Yeah, that would be it would be a big if the Blades could get through, but. We're not, how many years removed are we where there was Medicine Hat, Swift Current, Regina, PA, Saskatoon? They were all these sort of jostling for playoff position, and now we're sort of looking at, okay, Prince Albert, has a good chance to at least contend for the championship, but the other teams to me aren't contenders at this point. I would put the Blades in that category, although they might win a series.
I have no dog in this race, and I have no problem being very happy for the Prince Albert Raiders for whatever they can get, simply because nobody got screwed worse than the Prince Albert Raiders by the COVID-19 pandemic. They were in line to contend to defend their championship when that season just got wiped away. I feel like that's something that'll be talked about in like 20 years. Just anytime you get late in a season and it just gets taken away from you like that. It's like the 94 Montreal Expos had the best record in baseball, and then whoosh, strike, it just ended late in the season, but that's a whole other discussion.
That, I think Connor Bedard is the one that maybe has the fans to be able to watch Connor Bedard. We only watched him in the bubble when he was 15.
True.
If we would have watched him for a full season, I feel like we would have appreciated that so much more, right? Another full season to be able to see him. You saw what he did at 16 and 17, but 15 to come in that as an exceptional player. That would have been that's sort of one of the things I look on in terms of COVID wiping out things is getting the full Connor Bedard experience. But yeah, PA could be a little bit upset as well.
I feel like we don't talk that much about all the COVID impacts because it's still too fresh. We still don't want to talk about it because it was so awful. And
let's not talk about it.
That's fine. I'm fine with that. Before we go, you cover another team that plays across the street that some people might have heard of called the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I get a lot of people asking me, what do you think about the Riders going into this year? And I'm not around it like you are. Sounds like they've had to retool their pass rush. What do you make of their chances to defend, be the first repeat champions in franchise history with some of the changes that we've seen and some of the other players getting a year older?
Yeah, they obviously have a good chance. They're not worse than they were last year. They lost a couple of players in free agency, but you looked at who replaced them, they're fine. You mentioned the defensive line. Sure, Malik Carney, Habakkuk Baldonado, they're gone. They brought in James Waters, and now they're going to have an American rookie try to win a starting spot. Lost a couple of linebackers, replaced them. Their whole secondary's back. Trevor Harris is back, and he at no point looked like he couldn't be an all-star last year. Was MVP of the Grey Cup game. He's got another year of experience under his belt. I don't think he's slowing down at any point. And he's got a full cast of receivers except for Dante Myers, who's heading to the NFL. So, and AJ Lett's coming back. Maybe the biggest thing to me is a healthy offensive line and a strong offensive line. This team is not worse than they were last year, even though they missed a few pieces. So, yes, they have a good chance. I think other teams are better, though, or have gotten better. I shouldn't say better than the Riders. I still think they'll be among the top three favorites going in to the league. I think BC with Nathan Rourke. How do you argue that they're not going to be the class of the West? And then in Montreal with Davis Alexander, if he can stay healthy this year, I think they're basically considered the favorite to the East. And then who knows about Toronto with Chad Kelly and the changes that they've made. We've seen Chad Kelly play like an MOP quarterback, and then he all of a sudden missed all of last year. So where does Toronto fit? And I mean, I always say at this point in the season, you could make a case for any of the teams. You could say any of the teams are capable of winning a season going in. And that's maybe the uniqueness of the CFL is you could pick any one of the 9 teams and make your case and say why they're the favorites. And I think the Riders would fit in that mold. You could definitely make your case that they're going to have a chance to repeat.
Yeah, and that's why I love this time of year because everybody starts from the top. And I've been thinking a lot about comparing other defending champion teams, and I don't think I can think of one like in '67, in 1990, 2008, or 2014. You see where I'm going with that? The teams that won the championship the year before, and they've had some really good teams. I don't know any of them have been any more loaded than they are this year. One thing that
I think the Riders would have had the best chance to repeat in 14 had Durant not got hurt.
Yeah, I think they were 8-2 when he went down.
Exactly. Yeah. So they were on the crash. They were on the course to repeat, but injuries happen. Go ahead.
Right. No, I was just going to make the point. One trend. See, I think the reason I became such a big CFL fan is because it hit me right at an era when quarterbacks were scrambling like crazy and throwing for 6,000 yards. And if I had started in any other era, I might not have cared about it so much. And Mark Trestman came up and, he had a lot of success and God love him. But I've heard from offensive people around the league. Sorry, I've heard from other people who talk to offensive people around the league, not an insider by any stretch, that Trestman did really well with Calvillo. He did really well with Ricky Ray. I think you or I would probably be at least 500 if we're doing the play calling. You might be a little bit better than that if I had either of those two quarterbacks in their prime. And you see where I'm going with this. I'm not putting down Mark Trestman. I think he was great for the league. But apparently he also started this trend of all of these offenses with drop back pocket passers. And I don't like it. I don't think it's been good for the game. One guy who, to me, bucks that trend is Davis Alexander. The way he rolls out, the way he throws on the run, it's very Condridge Holloway-like. It's very Warren Moon-esque. It's very Damon Allen-esque. Trevor Harris is not that quarterback. He is a quick release guy. The fact that he is such a quick release guy, I feel like that means he is the one to be good into his 40s more than just about anybody else because he doesn't need to be athletic and he shouldn't take a lot of hits.
Yeah, 100%. And I think longevity of a quarterback, you have to be a pocket passer to last this long. There's, think about all the hits you call dual threat quarterbacks take over the course of a year, of a season, a career. Injuries do happen, but you look at some of the guys who have played into their 40s, they are pocket passers, right? Even Phillip Rivers, he could come back. He doesn't scramble out of the pocket and get first downs with his legs. He's a pocket passer, and his arm still works. And we do know that the body does break down a little bit as you age after, into your 40s and whatnot. But Trevor Harris takes care of his body, and I see no reason why he can't play this year. And even he told me a couple of weeks, he's not even writing off. A couple of weeks ago, he told me he's not writing off next year either, and he's going to see how he feels at the end of the year. And this isn't a farewell tour by any means. So, he's as good as he was last year, if not better, just based on his experience, and maybe a bit of a, not as big of a chip on his shoulder, because he had all those doubters, I guess, that would say, oh, he can't get it done, he can't win the championship. Well, he's got that now. He's going to play loose and calm, and he's to me, he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league this year, even if he doesn't have all the rushing yards. Yeah,
he just has to stay healthy. That's the key, exactly. Like every year. But I was going to say, before we let you go, they used 4 O-linemen. I think they did in the West Final and in the Grey Cup, if I'm not mistaken. Do you see them maybe starting the season that way this year? Yep. Or do you think they're going to roll with 4 offensive linemen? Wow.
Yep.
Sorry.
4 American offensive linemen. 4 American offensive linemen. Yeah, they didn't sign a center in free agency. That was one of the questions that I had going in. Would they sign a Canadian center and then flip Logan Ferland out to guard, where he is predominantly has started in his career? It looks like they're going to keep Logan Ferland at center, and then potentially, we'll see. Left guard is a position, an interesting position. Zach Fry. There's a couple of good Canadians. Zach Fry and Eric Anderson, the draft pick from last year, probably have the leg up. So they very well could start with 2 Canadian offensive linemen and have 3 Americans.
Yeah, it'll be.
They'll have an American guard. Jacob Bramer will be back at right guard.
For sure.
They'll have 2 American tackles. They could make that, and all of this because Tavon Campbell is your ratio breaking cornerback.
Right.
That to me is predominantly an American spot. You have a Canadian there, so you can earn that spot elsewhere. And they have 3 really good Canadian receivers, which again, a lot of teams just play 2. So you have those 2 kind of flexible spots where that's why you have more room to work on the offensive line. If you do want to go 4 Americans, they'll probably go 3.
I think that the Riders right now are a prime example of why GMs and teams need to think a little bit outside the box. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when they had all those troubles with the O-line for 3 years? 2 years for sure. And, we were hearing a lot of chatter that they couldn't find the tackles, or just getting tackles was hard to do because they had 2 American tackles. But quarterbacks that I've talked to and O-linemen will say that if you have a better guard, then your tackle doesn't have to do as much, etc. And I feel like it just got to a point where if they were really going to truly fix this, they were going to have to break the model, which they did, going with 3 and 4. And I know other teams have done it too. BC uses 4 American O-linemen quite regularly. Hey, listen, we're up against it. Thanks for doing this, and enjoy the game tonight. We don't have a lot of playoff hockey around here usually in the Western League, and we may not have any more after tonight. Regardless of what happens, enjoy getting to cover and be at a WHL playoff game with the Pats.
Will do. Should be a good one tonight.